And anything is selfless, with that pure intention. They're not doing charity, but the intention is a giving. That's another thing which people are not able to bring together. They say business cannot be Seva. Business can be Seva.
Well, my mother died in this city 6 months before opening the hospital from a coronary bypass surgery, from a poor hospital infrastructure, from infection. I took a oath myself. I'll never let this happen to anyone.
You need a clear thinking head, but without a warm, caring heart. That holistic business and that intent, and then the grace follows. And how do we amplify this?
Culture to create an organization starts from the top. You need to carry people. You cannot do that by dictating terms. They need to come to, understand your vision, the purpose, real lifetime examples, all of those things.
How does India truly use this as its ability to shape the future of the world?
So the ability to even think about another person will only come when you're full.
A very warm welcome to another edition of our Think Right podcast. And today we're going to discuss something very different and very interesting with someone who I would like to call the empathy ambassador for healthcare and medicine, Dr. Gurunath Reddy. Thank you so much, Guru, for being here with us. Guru's life is one where he went from India to the US, achieved tremendous success, but has come back to India and created the Continental Hospitals, one of the leading, largest hospitals here in India, and is delivering crazy and great amount of healthcare, to all sections of society in multiple ways. And I think that's the beauty and the ability for someone to be able to make such a difference in one lifetime. And he's still got a long way to go from here. And now I think, Guru, it's your journey from success to significance, to greater significance as we move forward. So welcome and thank you for being here with us. And of course, no conversation around Think Right is complete without our spiritual mentor, the light of Think Right, Sister Shivani. So thank you so much and a very warm welcome to you as well. So Guru, great to be here with you in your, city of Hyderabad, where you have created, such an amazing infrastructure amongst the, second or third largest single facility healthcare, and just take us a little bit through your life journey. Leaving India, going to the US, coming back, and really, you look at the glow on your face, right? It says it all. A life so well lived. A little bit around that.
Thank you, Rajan, for that introduction. I am thoroughly humbled. This is the biggest blessing of 2025 for me, to be sitting next to Sister Shivani, the Brahma Kumaris, and also interacting with you this past half hour or so. Just interestingly, in context of, this program, as I was briefly talking to Sister Shivani, whose programs I used to watch when I was in medical school. And then I went to the United States. And every other year when I came in, my father and mother were ardent followers, in watching Sister Shivani's discourse on the TV. Perhaps I believe it was every day in the mornings, for 30 minutes or so. And I was equally enthralled as a young physician, the depth, the knowledge, the pragmatism, and how she used to dissect many complex subjects for the lay people to understand who have not yet been acquainted with the Advantic philosophy, or not, being embedded in spiritualism in a greater depth of understanding. That clarity, what she had, was extraordinarily impressive. And that truly brought memories back to me as a young child, when I used to accompany my father to to Swami Ranganathananda, Swami Vivekananda's, his the mission, the discourses that used to happen every Sunday here in Hyderabad. And I was just I think in my junior college and then subsequently medical school. And that every Sunday from 6 to 7, that was one of the greatest treats that my father gave to me, listening to Swami Ranganathananda and interpreting Gita. See, there are many spiritual leaders in this world, correct? Now, spiritualism, when it is really kind of brought down to into small pieces for the lay people to understand and imbibe, that's the greatness.
Right.
When leaders, spiritual leaders, can dissect and relate metaphorically what happens in a day-to-day lives, then there is truly a reality check. So that was one of the very foundational events of my, growth towards spiritualism. My dad had a profound influence on me, and I believed with that dharma, that simplicity of living, performing, conducting, and doing whatever you do in life, I always root only in 2 or 3 things. Do no harm, be a person of integrity, be honest at all times. Very simple words. If you're truly married to this, okay, there won't be any inner conflict. No deep reading is even required. But how do people reach there? So obviously we need to be constantly be reminded, exemplified, and listening to, people like Sister Shivani and conversations with you and these kind of things will be have a generational shift,
So I think this whole discussion is about that shift within.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, because whether it's integrity or honesty, it's not for others to say that you know it before anybody else.
Yes.
What that means. And I think many people, seek that from outside, whereas this is something that comes from within.
Absolutely.
So this whole journey is about you making choices and, doing that. And you made some great choices, Guru. You went to the US, of course, but you've chosen to come back.
Yeah.
Right. What triggered that? And how does that really, affect your next gen and your generation going forward? Because now you've created something pretty significant in India too, right?
Well, I think before I really reflect on the journey back, I want to just highlight a little bit about my journey here. Now, as I said, we have 5 children, and my father was a teacher, okay? And he was one of the best teachers in those days back in this city. And the city did not have private schools. He was in a public school as a mathematics teacher, and has a great following. And so given that, his expectation of the children were to do well in school. We were fortunate enough to be sent to a private school in those days. It was extremely difficult, but he managed in the sense that he got us in there. And his expectation was that we should be first in the class. And so I grew up with that, objective and pressure, both. So throughout my career from school to, I was a state special mentor scholarship, so all my education was funded through my scholarship thing. In fact, to the point that when I was, in those days, there was this 12th grade system, 10th grade and junior college. And I was also state first in Hindi. So I had 2 scholarships. So I had to choose which one is what. So I chose a special merit because that assured me until I go through my medical school. So my entire school was funded. Now, interesting story I want to narrate to the audience. The reason I'm bringing this up, the father's pressure that we had, and we are very fearful of him, and extremely fearful, was that really healthy? My mother was obviously, they were both caring, of course, mother's compassion and mother being around and all of those things, so, but father being so tough and they're constantly to get being number 1 in the school. And not only that, even if you're number 1, say in mathematics, if you scored 60 or 70, he was not happy. He used to basically, have a lecture for 30 minutes. All my hard work, my sacrifice, I sent you to the best school and this is the performance. And so there were many times as a young kid, maybe my short height is because of that. the stress of that stunted to some extent, I used to go crying within my soul. I said, what is that a parent wants? Is this pressure really healthy? Yes, I can do it. I can do. And the other example was that, you're the oldest kid and you're you should be an example. Everybody follows you in the family and all of those things. But fortunately, I think by the grace of God, I was a top ranker and I continued the journey through my medical school. I was university first in the first year, last year, several gold medals and all of those things happened in my career. And a lot of extracurricular activities, which my father never endorsed. Like I was a debater, I was into road track, interact, service. From the point of service, I was so aligned from my 10th grade onwards, going to the villages and doing, various activities in the medical school, vaccinations, blood pressure, diabetes, all those things. So the concept of service that was born at a very young age and sacrificing all the weekends, in the service of people and, finally graduating and going to a foreign land. So this laid a foundation for me that I could be a leader within myself. So all of these things helped me catapult. I was a president of the college, editor of the magazine, So people looked up to me that, they can seek advice from me. They can seek help from me, guidance from me, and all of those things, that have happened. So now when I went to the US, such opportunity did not exist. And first of all, being in the US, there's always this issue about, how you discriminated, skin color, and we all know about this, correct? But I'm one of those persons that I'm not mainstream. I said, why should I really become pessimistic that I would be discriminated? Okay, that is within you, how you perceive. So that was the biggest challenge for me. I was in the most conservative state of America, Texas. If somebody says you're in Texas, a brown person is easily discriminated. And I was with a phenomenal medical center, world's largest medical center, Texas Medical Center. And on the day one of my reporting for my super specialization to my professor, David Graham, who is called father of the H. pylori bacteria, one of the most amazing scientists and doctors, and throughout the world, gastroenterologists know him. So I went to greet him. Dr. Graham, I'm Dr. Reddy reporting. And he stands with his back towards me, 6 foot 2 inches. There was a pall of silence. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, he doesn't say anything. And everybody knows that Dr. Graham is not easy to work with. So I again said, Dr. Graham, I'm Dr. Reddy reporting. He said, so what? My goodness, how should I interpret this? He said, so what? And then for the next 20 seconds later, he turns around. Then he says, here's the secretary. You go and visit with her and do the reporting. And there's a little story I want to tell here.
Sure.
And how this has an impact on me. So everybody feared Dr. Graham. Now, these are all super specialty residents, including my American colleagues. I was the only Indian guy in the entire group. They were so fearful of him that if you're not in the hospital by 7 o'clock, in those days we didn't have cell phones. We carried beepers. So the message is to come 3133, 313. It means that is his extension. He's calling from that extension. You're not still in the hospital. And the guys who are driving on the streets froze sometimes, ran to just the public phone to calling. And then I said, why he is, the way in which he is. So I found this man used to come at 4:30 in the morning and left the hospital at 10:30. Okay? So he looked at people. If in his 60s then he could put in so many hours, what is wrong with the younger generation? I was trying to read him. I was trying to read him. What is that, that is. So what I did after 6 months, I tried to beat him. You're at 4:30? Okay, I'll be there at 4:25. Okay, then he was astonished. It took me about 2 or 3 months because I wanted to win him. I wanted to in India, people might say, well, he's trying to, whatever it is, greasing his palms and this and that and whatnot. No, because he was such an encyclopedic human being, knowledgeable in history, arts and science and religion, And it took me after 2 months to basically click. And then at 6 o'clock in the morning, we used to have 45 minutes of coffee, walking down to the cafeteria. And those 45 minutes was somewhat like listening to Sister Shivani, on her television, interviews over the years. So again, in life, this story tells something is in your destiny is bound to happen. Okay. There is some spiritual guidance.
And situations create the choices, and you make those choices or sometimes, and when you look back, at that point you felt that was the right thing. So, Sister Shivani, we all just heard Guru's wonderful story. How should people be thinking about things like choices, overcoming, fear, maybe growing with fear or with, that anxiety, but then still, becoming so successful at different points in time. Few things that people can learn from Guru's story.
Yeah. Actually, as a child, we perceive that as fear and anxiety. But actually, that has actually become the foundation of who he has become after that. So that pressure, it's like weightlifting. That is a pressure, right? So had he did not have to lift any weights, he wouldn't have been able to do it once he was there. But his father made him lift those weights more than what he felt he could lift. So that is what we perceive as pressure. But along with that, his father was also strengthening him spiritually. If you just put the weights but you're not strengthening the child, then the child will collapse, right? So then it can convert into, in today's world, we call it anxiety of pressure. But the father was doing both the things. So that is what creates that beautiful balance.
Exercising decision.
Spiritually strengthening you.
Yes.
And then putting that pressure, because he's sure that he's spiritually strengthening you, will be able to handle the pressure. If a parent doesn't put that pressure, they really will not get the best out of the child's ability. So even that method which many parents adopt today, don't put pressure on the child. That is also not right. But then they're also not spiritually strengthening the children. So it's actually two disadvantages. You're not even strengthening the child, and you're also not even putting the pressure. So both ways it's a disadvantage. And this was both ways an advantage. You strengthen the child also, and you put the pressure also. If he was not strengthened and he did not have that pressure, what would he have done when he had gone into that college there or in that medical school there? And when the professor was, he wouldn't have been able to reach there in those 2 months that he reached, because suddenly he found another father figure kind of a person. And he had that deep-rooted sanskar that I have to win over this person because he used to win over his father. So you're able to face that. So his resilience was also increased. Pressure was also increased. So stress is equal to pressure divided by resilience, right? If pressures are high, I will experience extreme stress if my resilience is low. But pressure was also high. Resilience was also high, and he's reached where he has reached. And so in spite of having reached there and become that achiever, the resilience was so beautiful that he was able to let go of it and then change his life completely and come to Seva. Because he was, inner thing was energized. So he's not working with this intention. He's working with this intention. So that ability to be a giver, which was also groomed right from the beginning with Rotaract and Interact, that Seva Bhav. So the ability to handle the pressure, become an achiever, but at the same time being so strong that able to let go in 1 second and then shift to Seva. So this is so many aspects of a human being's sanskars, all put into one very beautiful package. Yeah.
And that's the beauty about life when you look back, at it.
So you should actually look back and change what you think about your father.
So beautiful.
And you can actually give all the credit to him right now for what you are and where you've reached and what you are giving back to the world through that.
So, Sister Shivani, that is the brilliance that you have, okay? That is the brilliance that really, engaged me through your discourses, which had an impact. The so beautifully you narrated, encapsulated my life's journey, and can be and can be a wonderful example to to all that audience who is listening to us today. That's very true. We did not like our father. Literally, I use the word hate. As a young teenager, somebody's putting to this grinding mission in life. I said, what is this? Prevailed till I finished medical school. Then beyond 23, 24, started redeeming a respect. When we looked around, all the other kids, what happened to their careers? They went to the best school. They fell on the wayside. Why did this happen? Including our cousins, our nephews. I said, my father, of course my mother, she was our sponge. And without that pressure or that expectation, and that spiritual guidance, and I don't think so I would have been in life, where I am. So since then, he himself was a very hard worker, which is a true story. My father worked 365 days a year with no exaggeration. There's no Dashara, there's no Diwali. He went even on those days. After the teacher of exalted career, he went into business, construction business of his family. He was a class 1 contractor, became one of the very top builders of this city, did many colonies, but with the greatest discipline of life. 400 workers, never we saw one single person at our home. He conducted his life with that discipline. So he continued. We used to watch him. Okay, this is a man who worked so hard. So for us, hard work, when people tell me today all the time, you're at this age of yours, why are you working so hard? Many of my colleagues already retired. I said, this comes very naturally. I'm not tired. I'm not mentally fatigued.
This is a conversation of debate in the country today.
Right now.
We've been hearing 90-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks. I think it's the choices that people make so that what you say, you are in the right state internally. It's not about balance.
Yes,
it's about
not
how many.
about the number of hours. It's not about how much you get. Like he said, my father could work 365 days.
It's what you achieve.
Yeah, but it's about how you're strengthening yourself. If you don't energize yourself, you don't strengthen yourself, and then you're only working, then your mind is not able to handle that. And then that's why this whole debate is there. So it's not about debating, because each one will have to take their own decision. The one who is saying you should work 70 hours a week is because that person is able to do it with ease. Like his father was able to do it 365 days with ease. So if I'm able to do something with ease, I feel, if I can do it, anyone else can do it. And then someone saying today, no, it should be 90 hours a week, because that person is able to do it with ease. And actually, any of us can do it. If we, like he said, 365 days. If I look at us, we don't have a holiday. There is no concept of a holiday, but we don't feel it as work. So it's like you're very happy doing it. Your happiness quotient should rise with your work. But today we use the word work stress. So since the time we have the word work stress, so we say more the work, so more the stress. So then you cannot be having stress all 7 days. So then people will say at least 2 days should be a de-stressor. So that's how we've divided our work. So then obviously they can't work 7 days a week.
And then you're oscillating between a stressful life and if you come to a position where you're happy, then there is more like an integration and an harmony in what you're doing.
Then work is like part of your life. It's not work, life. It's not like that. It's basically, that's why spirituality is so important. If you're strengthening yourself, you're able to flow through ease. And this word work stress should be out of our vocabulary. Work and stress doesn't go hand in hand, because even if you're working 5 days a week, it's not good to be stressed 5 days a week anyways. And then the other 2 days, the methods that they are using to de-stress are not a de-stressor. So if they will party late, they will party the entire night, calling it a de-stressor. Wrong habits of eating, wrong lifestyle, wrong sleeping habits. It's not a de-stressor. It's actually, I feel it's more stressful the weekend than it is the 5 days a week. So all 7 days you're creating that stress.
I think there's a,
So
these are things for, and at the end of the day, the change has to come from within for each person, right? And it'll be, distinctly different. And, I think that shift that comes in a person, right? You achieve the empathy aspect that we talked of, your early giving. So now that you've come back here, to India and you have set up what you have. When you look forward, right, we've come to your journey till here. What will the next 10 years in Guru's life look like?
Rajan, just allow me to reflect a little bit on this work stress, this thing. So my father was an iconic example, right? How could this man work? Who was his tutor? Who made him? Nobody forced him. And his fundamental goal was, I should achieve. There were many big names, right? In all over the world. There are people, successful people, established businesses, entrepreneurs and whatnot. Probably his goal was, I should be one of them. And because he was not born with a silver spoon. He was born in a low middle class family and had very tough times and all of those things. So he had some objective, some really, zeal in him that to do what he needs to do. So when I used to work in the US, was 100 to 120 hours a week. Okay, 18 to 20 hours. When I start my day at 5:30 and by the time it goes to 1:32. This I did for 16 years, non-stop, like a missionary zeal. And a lot of people, they were astonished. And I used to tell this story. If you call this hospital at midnight, only 2 doctors you can to a telephone operator. One is Dr. Reddy, there's one Dr. Luis Castillo. He was an infectious disease specialist. Guaranteed you'll be able to find these doctors. Why? It's not because they're in the pursuit of making money. Because typically in America, when you go to work, everybody attaches to longer hours you work. Certainly, the reward is also there. Okay, but there, my fundamental goal was my patients. Okay, I was so kind of caring in the sense I used to make 2 and 3 times rounds. If you did a procedure in the morning, when you're busy, you go to your office, you see your patients, then you're seeing, new consultations. But the patient has done the procedure, still in the office, did I get a chance to talk to or visit her family? So this kind of visiting second, third time, she could have compassion. How to share compassion? I was not getting paid extra for that second or third visit, but that was not the goal. So if I did not do this, and especially people say when you go to America or foreign countries, Indians or other races, we have to work 2 times, 3 times harder. And that was true. If you don't put in those hours, there is no way that at age 35, I could have become chief of staff of an American hospital, in a place like Texas. So my journey at 35, I was the chief of staff, and that continued with different hospitals. And that's how I rose to become the president, all those things. So you asked me earlier the question, what made you come back? I was just addressing that. So when I turned 50, I was almost at the peak of many things. I was the chief of staff of hospitals, chief of staff of 83 hospitals, president of the Medical Society, president of Houston Academy of Medicine. And then I was going to the Texas Medical Association. Next was the AMA in my line of professional rise. And then I was already, what a top gastroenterologist, one of the largest groups. So that was not satisfying. I said, I keep earning money. Okay, going sailing or vacationing, which was not within me. I'm a very agitated person. Unless I take up a challenge to solve a puzzle, it never kept me happy. That's how it started, where my family consented. Not a single friend of mine in India or in the US endorsed my idea of this migration. They said I was crazy. They used the words I was mad. They said you would fail like others who have failed in the last 20 years. You give up such a successful practice. What is wrong with you? Not a single person. But then I knew what I was doing. I have studied the people who have done before, why they failed. Okay, 2 years. Well, it was an intense study. It was almost going to a Gurukul. I studied the failures. I studied the existing hospitals. I studied the needs of the hospital, traveling from Hyderabad to Delhi, to Gurgaon, to Mumbai, to all these hospitals. They were very nice to receive me and explain, met the CEOs, all of those things, Then I said, what is needed in India primarily is hospital infrastructure. The tragedy is that you convert hospitals from buildings, not paying attention to all the healthcare code. See, what did Florence Nightingale say? 60% of human disease, which holds true even today, just like our great scriptures, she said, clean air, and good ventilation and cleanliness of your surroundings as an impactful recovery at 60% of the time for human disease, and which is very, very true. Enough articles have been published scientifically what these three things at the end of the day will do in recovery of a patient. So I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. So we have to first make sure that we don't compromise, on space and all of these things. If I have that strength only, I will do it. So anyhow, so we put this blueprint. I had the strength. Failure was not an option. I said, I will not fail. Okay. And we had very tough time doing things in India. And one simple example, Continental is an 18-floor building. I bought the land, at commercial prices. There was no godfather. It's in the records, verifiable. Everyone knows this story. I said, there's no government that gave it to me. There was no hospital before Continental in India, all the big hospitals, which did without governmental patronage. Continental was the first hospital completely driven by my sacrifice and earnings in the Western country, which is my second mother. It gave me that opportunity to come back and do this. So one little story, I said, I spent so much of money, millions of dollars to buy the land, which is more than Manhattan and New York. Then suddenly, after the planning and foundation, the government comes and says, you can't build a hospital beyond 30 meters because it's according to the Indian laws. I said, none of you told us this before. We submitted the plans. We can't do a high-rise hospital. Then we said, how was Jaslok built? How was Medanta built? Then we brought back to our state government. I said, this is not right. We paid so much for the land. So the then chief minister was very nice enough to say, he heard us. He constituted in a high-power committee comprising 8 IAS officers. Instead, look into what Dr. Reddy is saying. Then he engaged the Nagarjuna Engineering College, asked us to engage an engineering firm from the US called Shermer Engineering to submit a report to the government in 6 months. Can we do a high-rise hospital? And then the bureaucrats, some of them who objected, said they wanted to visit Japan, they wanted to visit US to study. The then chief secretary said, everything is on the net. Why do you have to travel that far? That whole thing lasted 18 months and I was sleepless. See, obviously, there's a debt equity, you borrow from the banks. Construction was coming to a halt, Finally, the government of Andhra Pradesh, then the combined government of Andhra Pradesh, issued a GO after 18 months after the report presented that we can go up to 60 meters. First law in the country because of our efforts. I could have failed. I could have said, listen, this is a country, nothing would happen. People throw stones at all the times. So for me, I embarked on this journey as failure for me is not an option. No matter what it is, I'm going to do it. And lastly, once we did the hospital, there was a big propaganda. So everybody said this is a 7-star, this is a 5-star, nobody's going to come and all of these things. The reason why they said 7-star, 5-star, just because we complied to international standards. Hey, your corridor space should be 8 foot because your stretchers had to go. Your fire corridors have to be, of this dimension. Your patient rooms and your handicapped bathrooms and all of these things are so important. I followed just those guidelines. This was not built with marble. He said, that's the propaganda for 3-4 years. It stunted us. Even hospitals in competition, they spread this rumor. But anyhow, I think these are all things in life where you develop a resilience, as Sister has just told earlier. If you do not have the resilience and you are not walked through this life in instances, I think for human beings, you tend to fail, even though failure is perhaps not written your destiny. You need to carry on the mission with that gumption. That's what I
We
feel.
talk of India being an entrepreneurial country, where, the never give up attitude is really what we need as a country to move us from where we are to where we aspire to be, right? And I think, it's interesting. This is not only about a successful journey for you, but your efforts and your sacrifices and your perseverance, as you said, has changed the fabric for a country like India, where now every state, every hospital can at least imagine that, So sometimes, giving, Sister Shivani, becomes what you do. You don't even realize the amplification impact of that. Because if we are all connected and, there is there's something that goes out which many others benefit from. And you can't even quantify that, right?
You won't even ever come to know.
You won't even come. And
even
that's
if you
probably
want
the
to
best way.
quantify it, you will not come to know where out it has reached. That's the beauty of it. But that's because it isn't done with the intention of giving. When it's done with an intention of getting and achieving and wanting, you can quantify it. But when it's done with an intent, it's like you put something out into the air and you let it go where it has to go. And you wouldn't even know where it has reached. You can't. Even if you think and try to analyze it, you won't be able to make out who's got what, created what shift, from there what it influenced their children with. So it impacts when anything is selfless, with that pure intention. They're not doing charity, but the intention is a giving. That's another thing which people are not able to bring together. They say business cannot be Seva. Business can be Seva. Business can be Seva. It's not always just charity which is Seva. You're doing business, you're going to earn, you're going to put that back into the business. But the intent behind that business is only, I want to give to the world. And I'm ready to go through anything for that, to be able to give to the world. That intent is Seva.
And especially when it is in the area of healthcare.
No, in everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere.
I understand.
Whether it's education, whether it's our schools today, they're private. They're a school, they've invested a lot of infrastructure, they've done everything. But that intent has to be only selfless giving. So that intent also becomes the vibration and that emotional strength of the child. But when that business model is that intent, and you're only thinking of, like the other day I was in a school, nowadays it's like how doctors fear patients right now. The patients can react. Teachers fear parents because parents can come and just because they feel they're paying such huge amounts as fees and as if the teacher is more answerable to them. And the teachers will fear that if the parent has to complain, I can lose my job. The head of the school will fear this parent might just take the child and leave. And that whole fear is because, what am I getting? So the other day I was in a school and I said, let the parent take their child and leave. It's okay. If one parent is going to do such fragile parenting that they don't want the teacher to say anything, let them leave. But the fear of losing that one child, that one student, does not allow you to be your best version to the remaining 50 who are there in your class. So let them leave. So that's where it has to shift from not just business that what I'm getting. I'm here to give. I am earning is natural, but I'm here to give. So the intent makes all the difference. And that intent is what gives the power to be able to have, hold on to these situations. But that intent also energizes other people. And that's the ripple in that thing.
And that comes from a position of compassion, empathy.
But it's still coming from his earlier ways of emotional strength.
Now, how do you translate that to everybody in your large hospital? How do you make sure everyone who comes in, is there a culture? Is there something you have emphasized to build upon?
It's a wonderful question, Rajan, and as well, it's extraordinarily challenging. But just to reflect on the last answer or the last explanation, Sister Shivani mentioned about the intent, and in business also you can do Seva. This is really profound, very profound. I think this morning's conversation is one of the most profound takeaways for me, because it helps me in the sense when we are creating Continental at the end of the day, when we are trying to configure to the required healthcare standards. When we have so much of space, people try to put in 50 more rooms, an extra machine, and the walkable area is so little, because all these can be commoditized into revenue. I didn't think from that standard. I studied when Indian ICUs have 60% infection. When a patient goes into hospital with one infection, he develops a second infection or third infection and they die. There's a reason why our mortality from critical care units in India was so high. All these things are studied because my mother died in this city 6 months before opening the hospital from a coronary bypass surgery, from a poor hospital infrastructure, from infection. I took a oath myself. I'll never let this happen to anyone. So our infrastructure is all single ICU rooms. And we bought some Western concepts in terms of sanitation. And the reason for that is, and we charge even 50% lesser than existing hospitals. I said, listen, if I can really help a patient leave the hospital with no second infection and not increasing the bill by staying for extra 2 weeks, that's the biggest thing that I have done. So these are extremely important. Like in business, while you want to earn, but where is that bigger aspect of you, that generosity, that compassion, that empathy that can come, that what you're doing and delivering, it does not matter just in the hospital sector, in any business. I think that conscience should be prevailing. So this hospital was exactly done, I would love for both of you to please come and visit sometime and see this, how we have done it without compromising, what the architectural standards are, or just focusing only on the big business aspects. Very important. Then how do you bring this culture to the doctors? It was very shocking for me. And that could have been a deal breaker. Would I survive in India? The systems are so different. High corruption. Patients are referred by doctors who really charge or take money. Diagnostic centers. They're all positioned. Doctors are on the payroll. Money goes at the end of the day when you're referred to these tests. And here is Dr. Reddy trying to do this and bring in these kind of principles. Like one of the examples, we're the first hospital in the country where I said everything is on electronic digital system, electronic medical records. There was no choice of paper. The reason for that? Everything is transparent. Doctors can't change the diagnosis. Okay, your billing cannot be changed, the wish and fancy of who can pay, who cannot, and what not. So the same propaganda, he will fail, this won't work, and he's not following some of the ground rules. And people used to walk into my office, a chairman's office. I think after 6 months, 9 months, sometimes groups of doctors came in. Dr. Reddy, you need to change your method of, marketing and business strategy. Then if year and a half, I said, I will not change, but I have an idea. If a system is, I can't change overnight, correct? Never try to change anything overnight. As I say, when you're in Rome, be a Roman. There is a validity to that even today. So this has to be gradual. You have to earn the trust of the people. So I studied why doctors ask for money when they refer a patient. So my simple reasoning was, these doctors are in different parts of the state or city. They're running their offices. They have overhead cost. Okay, so their loyalty is, what is that in for me when I'm working up a patient? Sure, I should get something back. So my idea was, I will make all of you associate physicians of Continental. We will pay you in the form of your business expense. Okay? This is not a bribe. Now, we have the right to decline surgeries. We have the right to decline the treatments that you're requesting because we decide on the patient. You're not sending to us because you get a monetary gain. And that was a success. Still, it was a very partial success, but I was able to convince and carry my doctors, with this appeal. Okay. This will make you happy. But the other way I used to tell them, listen, if you're a good doctor, you don't need all these things. See, in America is a great country. Youngest doctors when we graduate and come out. Oldest patients also, they never question. They never say you're young. They're so nice. That's a great country that truly appreciates. Maybe to some extent they're also nicely protected, because if the doctor really makes a mistake, the legal consequences are very bad. So maybe they have that subtle protection. But still, in India, contrary to that, there is so-called big doctors syndrome. Everyone wants to rush to a bada cardiologist hai, a bada gastroenterologist hai, a bada cancer wala doctor hai. और उसके सामने जाके hours together वहाँ पर लाइन में ठहरे हुए रहते हैं. And the doctor will have 1 minute or 2 minutes. ये क्या 1 minute, 2 minute thing? That was one of the also influencers for me to start. When I used to come and take my mother to the cardiologist, wait for 1.5 hours, okay, in the dust and bead and pushing people into the lifts and all that stuff. Then after 1.5 hours and you're 2 minutes, you're coming, writing something, we can't even read. Then after that, we don't know where should we go. Then we're asking 10 others. Is it an injection? Is it a pharmacy? Is it a diagnosis test? So the point is, all of these things is not people don't know, but the commercialization that everything is only for money at the end of the day as drastically affects, patient care. So I was emphatic. I was firm. I convinced the doctors, this is how you need to build your practice. One of the examples, when I do procedures, as a gastroenterologist, I'm an interventional guy. So in the US, I should tell this story to them for decades. So from 6 o'clock till 12:31, 10, 20, 30, whatever. Next day morning, from the car, when the cell phone came in, I used to call all my patients while driving. We're not supposed to, legally now. Okay? Just touch base with them. Are you okay? Miss Mary, Miss Andrews, David. I just want to make sure. It was so touching for them. Mm-hmm. And for me also. And then those patients I could not reach, I gave that list to my nurse. During the course of the day when I'm seeing patients, please reach out to the patients. I would like to talk. So I said the same thing to my doctors. I said, try this example. You guys are ordering tests, but then you wait till the patient comes. What if there is a mass, a tumor on the CT scan? You're waiting for the next month, start doing this. 3 years later, a dozen doctors came to me and said, Dr. Reddy, sir, what you said really worked for us. Yeah. So the simple, small, it's a culture that comes from the top. Yeah. And then once you imbibe, you have to exemplify, correct? I cannot be lackadaisical. Oh, chairman, this thing and whatnot. I don't have 15 people walking with me in the hospital. No tamasha. I said simplicity. You're here for a purpose. The purpose is the anguish and anxiety of the patient who needs their physical recovery, whose physical recovery will eventually strengthen their emotional and spiritual, necessities. Correct? When you're physically impaired, your emotional and spiritual dimension suffers. You get them well, you're out. That should be the singular goal, which I learned from my son recently. He taught me that physical recovery is very important for ongoing journey in the patient's life for emotional and spiritual.
Your mind otherwise is so absolutely captured by the physics. Yes.
So the culture to create an organization starts from the top. You need to carry people. You cannot do that by dictating terms. They need to come to, understand your vision, the purpose, real lifetime examples, all of those things. So in business, there should be a heart. There should be a divine grace. And if that is really imbibed, we could be a great country. I have seen this in America. American business people, entrepreneurs, either by the virtue of, their required statutory guidelines, they cannot really waver much and all of those things, whether that is happening or whether they are really spiritually engaged on that front, overt cheating, overt, kind of all of these things. Typically, we don't. Things have given us something very good also. That's we have learned, and it's time for us to, being in India, to with all our background and our history and our civilization, we can be one of the greatest nations.
Oh, you said it so well. You need clean working hands.
Yeah.
You need a clear thinking head, but without a warm, caring heart. Yeah. That holistic business and that intent, and then the grace follows. And yeah, how do we amplify this? We are discussing this. How do we make this a culture, not only at Continental or a few establishments? How does India truly use this as its, ability to shape the future of the world? Because today, I think as India, the country is being recognized globally. There's so much that has happened. How do we
See, the word which is coming there is compassion, right? It's not a business. It comes through compassion. But how will you be able to create compassion? So in the World Physician Association oath also for doctors, earlier the oath was all about, your treatment, put your patient first. Then they changed the oath, and the oath is not, the oath is now, doctor, practice self-care. If you don't practice self-care, you suffer from compassion fatigue. So the ability to even think about another person will only come when you're full. So if you're full, if you practice self-care and you're full, you're experiencing contentment, then you don't have to be a giver. That giving just comes naturally. It comes naturally. But if I'm not energized enough, then I'm only thinking more about what I am getting because I'm not full. So self-care is equal to compassion, and lack of self-care will create compassion fatigue. So like he's created the systems, now the same doctors also, and also the nurses, which means everybody in a healthcare setup, if they are going to practice self-care, then their ability to be compassionate goes, otherwise they're just treating. So in spirituality, we have two words. One is treatment, one is healing. So is a doctor treating a patient or is a doctor healing a patient? So healing would be just the vibration of the healer influences the patient. So here is the doctor, and across his table is a person who's physically unwell, emotionally not in the best condition, with one or two caregivers who are also not emotionally, financially right now in the best situation. And here is a doctor. But if the doctor is also stressed, agitated, irritated, so here across the table are coming on a lower vibrational energy, but the healer is also on a lower vibrational energy. So at the end of the day, the doctor absorbs the anxiety and the stress of the patient. And that's why burnout, depression is very high in the healthcare profession. Not because of what they do, it's because of what they're exposed to throughout the day. They're not just exposed to infection in a body. They're exposed to emotional infection throughout the day. A hospital is a place of vibration of pain, vibration of fear, vibration of anxiety, vibration of crisis. It is a very lower vibrational place. So if everyone in a healthcare setup starts practicing self-care, then the healer is at a higher vibrational energy. And so when here comes the patient and the family, the healer does not get influenced by their lower energies, but the healer actually empowers them with their vibrations. So the patient feels comfortable even before the treatment has started. The treatment is just on paper right now, but you walk out of such a doctor's room and you will say, "Meko pata hai, I'm with the right person. I've just felt nice being around that doctor." So I always tell doctors, your certificates that you put up in your room, your awards, this whole rooms are nowadays full of awards and what they get at conferences. I feel like, I as a patient, I'm not going to read that when I come and see there. I've already checked up about you on online and then I'm coming to you for treatment. What I'm going to feel when I come to you is just how I feel that energy being around you. So the energy of the person and the intent of a person cannot be hidden. You don't have to be spiritual to be able to feel the vibe and the intent of a person. So it not just protects the healer from the lower energies they're exposed to, it empowers.
Yeah.
So in India, if you see, faith healing is a very big thing, where people who are not doctors, they're not doctors, but they're just people who will come to them and say, idhar haath lagaya, idhar aise kuch kiya. You're like, मैं ठीक हो गया. कैसे ठीक हो गया? So that is higher vibrational. So if we take medicine and spirituality together, so then India has the power to create miracles in big numbers and give it to the world. Because the power of mind and healing starts from the mind of the patient, but it also starts from the mind of the healer. So if every person in a hospital keeps that as their intent, but first takes care of themselves, then actually the number of miracles that you can create in treatment goes up, because you're working not just on the body, which is not well, you're working on the mind, which is influencing the body, which is going to create the healing. So spirituality, when doctors come to us at Mount Abu, our elders, our dadis, they all say to them, you're not just a doctor, you're a double doctor. Take care of their mind, their body will heal faster, and you will remain happy and energized. So self-care is very important for being able to, you cannot be compassionate just as a word, be compassionate. You just have to have that energy to be able to radiate.
Yeah, therefore it's mindful medicine.
Yes.
And healing then becomes a byproduct that, is just, so beautifully put. But, could you talked about physicians and Guru, you're also a physician, right? And you're a physician, you're a gastroenterologist, really renowned around the world. And, this whole thing of the gut and the mind, right? Being so interconnected, right? So if you're helping get the gut right, the mind automatically, therefore we talk about gut instinct. There is something that opens up in your being if your gut is, you feel it from within, right? So I think it's relevant to this conversation, particularly that background that you have. How do you look at that, in your own, personal profession of as a doctor?
No, Rajan, it's a very, very relevant question. And thank you, Sister Shivani. What a beautiful explanation that you've given with regards to the self-care of the doctor. And, you cannot undermine this. You have to underscore this so well, so beautiful. And we would like to play this snippet in our medical grand rounds regularly. That's what it should be. So coming back, as we know that today in the 21st century, lots of scientific discovery has led to the importance of the gut as actually the engine of the human body. For decades and centuries, we always thought the power is vested in the brain and the mind, that controlled everything that we do. And interestingly, the phrases of, the strong gut and if you have the guts, you can do something. It's really kind of amusing how and who thought of this centuries ago in various civilizations. It's not just in Hinduism alone, where they gave importance to our gut. So what is happening is, simply put, in the scientific world, we all know that the human gut has trillions of bacteria. These trillions of bacteria that you acquire at the time of your birth, primarily from your mother's womb. Now, this is very interesting here. It's not the father is contributing. When it comes to your genetic makeup, it's both the father and mother. When it comes to the gut bacteria, it's all your mother's flora that you get. Now, science has discovered what we have understood in the last 2 decades, and more is coming out. There's these trillions of bacteria. There are good and bad bacteria, okay? Good and bad actors. So, lots of human disease, now we understand, is because of the imbalance or disturbed behavior of the gut bacteria, which alters our immune system, and the end product is human disease. So many of the human diseases are now being kind of blamed or rooted in this particular understanding. So in terms of anxiety, some of the human virtues or human expressions of emotions whether it's anxiety or people suffering from depression or manic depressive illnesses or many other psychiatric illnesses today, of all the things the gut bacterial science has given as knowledge to, is mostly to psychiatric illnesses. Believe that majority of these things are rooted in the imbalance of your gut bacteria. So where now the current research is going on, what we call as gut dysbiosis, means the biological, ecology within the human gut is altered. But now the question is, you have trillions of bacteria, correct? So how do you find out which is a culprit? So that's the research which is now leading to that we have identified 100 good bacterial species, which we believe when we can test them, if this is present in somebody, this is a manifestation as a problem. If this is not present in somebody, probably they would not have that. So I think the way in which the future is going to unravel, further unravel this mystery, and probably there should be targeted medications or opportunities to prevent the so-called dysbiosis of the human gut and prevent these various illnesses. Many immunological diseases today we call it lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and things like inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease. India is the only country that parallels along with the United States for these inflammatory bowel diseases. All of these things now are proven beyond doubt. It is the disturbance of the gut bacteria that leads to altered immune system and causing this problem. And Indians are more prone because of our ubiquitous use of antibiotics, which is the biggest culprit here. Because everyone in this country, if you have common cold or cough or whatnot, you can go to a pharmacy, pop in an antibiotic. It's basically, they say 3 days of antibiotics can wipe out the entire forest. Entire gut bacteria can lead to imbalance, which can have consequences.
If you take excess of antibiotics.
Excess or also unnecessary, both. Which is basically, it's like a forest set on fire. By the time you reset that ecological system, will be months or even years, go from there. So that's where I think our behavioral expression, whether it's anger, whether it is anxiety, emotional upset, when somebody walks into my office, my palms are sweaty, my heart races all the time. So we start looking into whether it's a gut dysbiosis in these patients. That's where I want to ask Sister Shivani on this issue.
Yeah.
Now, spiritually, we have been focusing on for us to develop these habits and cultivate and conquer and whatnot. Now science is coming in the way that the root cause is what is happening within you. So how do you connect this now?
What we see with the experience of so many people, both influence each other. So that's why when we start a spiritual practice, the first thing we do is change our diet. Because we know कि जैसा अन्न है वैसा मन है. So if I want to work on my mind, I need to first work on my diet, on my food. So first thing is we simplify the diet, so which means either first changing to vegetarian, giving up any of these addictive substances. We at Brahma Kumaris, we stop onion, garlic, which has a lot of tamas. You go to a lighter diet. There itself, before even starting meditation or learning meditation, we start seeing a change in people. They're already feeling better. They're already feeling calmer and peaceful. That's why if you see in India, there are a lot of festivals, special days where you have that lighter food, because you want to be at a higher vibrational on those days. So you have fasting, again, giving rest to the gut. So it's very, very connected. The other thing also that we find is when people start thinking right, meditating, their ailments, which they were probably carrying for so many years, they start getting healed. So you see both the things happening together. So what I'm eating is affecting my mind, but how I'm thinking is also affecting my gut. So if you take care of both, which means you eat right and you think right, then hand in hand it creates a beautiful combination. And I think we've all experienced it. When we create any change in our diet, even when people go through a detox thing, they're going for their body. They'll go for 15 days for a detox. They're going through They're going only for their body, but they actually feel better after that 15-day detox. So it's obviously very, very well connected. And that's why I feel that the children today who are experiencing this anxiety, panic attack, depression, nothing has happened in life as such to go through that. It's a lot to do with the gut. It's all to eating this fast food, junk food, wrong time of eating, just sitting at home and ordering food, eating less of home cooked food. And you know all this, mera bachcha sabji nahi khata, mera bachcha ye nahi khata. So we've kind of pampered them and allowed them to eat only what they wanted to eat. We did not get that choice. We were like, you have to eat every sabji, whether you like it or no, nobody's asking you, you still have to eat it. But they're not being brought up that way. So that's affecting the body. But right now we're seeing more affecting the mind. So I think even if parents get their children to change what they are eating, they will really definitely find a change in the way they are thinking.
No, absolutely. And as we've been discussing, think right, eat right, move right, and sleep right gives you a right to sleep. And how do we really take the think right process into many other aspects of your life? Because that becomes the foundational building block of a great quality life, and one like what you have, not only lived, but also, I'm sure will inspire so many others, to continue. As a matter of fact, I must say that this conversation today has been, so enriching and so enlightening. And the fact that many a times we talk about what India needs, right, as we go forward, and what are the things that can make a big change. Even Gandhi had to leave India to go out and then come back and make that happen. And many, there's so many examples of that, right? I think this is what is the time for India, So like you, Guru, there are so many others from India. And I hope this discussion inspires others to see how they can use what they have built. Like, simple thing you talked about, the right corridor, entry into a hospital being the minimum thing, being viewed as somebody as a, something which India is not, it's too high profile or seven. Whereas that is what India needs to have if we want to become a Viksit Bharat, if we want to become a developed India, if we want to provide the minimum level of quality of life.
Yes.
That's what we talk about. It's not only, what is happening at work, it's a quality of life that we need to change in this country. And I hope this conversation can reach out to many others and inspire them. But thank you for sharing your journey, being here with us, and really bringing out that aspect. And thank you again, Sister Shivani, as, Guru rightly put, for really, bringing all of this thing into such perfect perspective and with your scientific formulas. And, the simple takeaway, as I say, among so many others today is that, you build your resilience, you can handle pressure. And the moment you can get that right, that equation is what, not only people in India, but around the world need to build. So again, thank you very much,
Raj.
for a wonderful
Sister Shivani. Thank you.
You too can start or enhance your mindfulness journey using the Think Right app on iOS and Android store. It's got a huge number of daily affirmations, daily journeys, daily meditations that will enable us to hold your hand as you move in this transformative journey of life.